Bangladesh is burning again, in bullets, lynch mobs, and streets gripped by fear. Political leaders are being shot, minorities targeted on rumors, newsrooms attacked, and the state is losing control. Muhammad Yunus was meant to stabilize the country. Instead, under his watch, Islamist forces have surged and violence has become routine. What was promised as a democratic reset is fast turning into a breakdown. For India, this is not someone else's crisis. An unstable, radicalizing neighbor hits directly at national security and border stability. As Bangladesh unravels and Yunus falters, how long can New Delhi cling to old assumptions before reality dictates its next move? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. What Bangladesh is witnessing today is not random chaos. It is the predictable outcome of a political experiment gone wrong. The removal of Sheikh Hasina did not usher in reform or reconciliation. It opened the gates to violence, radicalism, and a brutal power struggle, one that the Yunus administration has proved incapable of controlling. So at some point, we have to understand that the spillover from across the border is inevitable. What are India's options as Bangladesh erupts again? In December this year, Bangladesh saw a string of targeted killings. Sharif Osman Hadi, a student leader who rose from last year's July uprising, was assassinated in Dhaka, shot point blank by motorcycle-borne gunmen. Then came Muhammad Muttalib Sikdar, a senior Labour leader of the National Citizens Party, shot in the head in Khulna. While initial reports described his condition as critical, party sources later said the bullet grazed his skull and his condition is now stable. These were not crimes of passion. They were professional hits, close-range shootings, clean escapes, a signature of organized political violence returning to Bangladesh's streets. And Hadi's killing, in particular, acted as a matchstick thrown into dry tinder. Hadi was no mass leader. He was a product of a political vacuum. Unknown before the fall of Sheikh Hasina in August 2024, he became the face of one of dozens of outfits born out of the so-called July protest. Their appeal was loud on television, sharp on social media, and thin on the ground. The reality is this: after Hasina's ouster, the political balance in Bangladesh tilted sharply to the right. The Awami League, still commanding the loyalty of at least 30% of voters, was pushed out of the system altogether. And into that vacuum stepped Islamist forces that had been waiting patiently for years.
This regime change operation, Muhammad Yunus, is backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Everything that he's doing and saying is as a mouthpiece of the Jamaat-e-Islami. And as I told you, they've brought into the interim regime all the Islamist parties. If there is an interim regime, of course, this one was sworn in on the constitution of Bangladesh, which had no provision for an interim regime. But even if you go by the old definition, which was earlier in the Bangladesh constitution, it was supposed to be a caretaker government just for 90 days with a non-party group of advisors to the chief advisor, and they're supposed to conduct elections, and that's all. But this regime deliberately said, no, we will do reforms before election and we will have elections after 4 years. It was opposed by the people. The demand of the people was for early elections, and giving into that pressure, Muhammad Yunus has now called elections in February of 2026. But still, the predilection is entirely in favor of an Islamist regime. I want to tell you that, when Osman Hadi was assassinated, as I said, a small, little-known person, but now the way in which he's being eulogized, he's being buried next to the grave of the national poet of Bangladesh, Qazi Nazrul Islam, and the way in which the Western embassies, the German embassy actually flew its flag at half-mast. You had Americans and others sending out strong messages of mourning and, sorrow and so on. It really seems to be that many of these countries are taking a highly partisan approach, and that is completely undiplomatic.
Jamaat-e-Islami did not merely benefit from Hasina's fall. It claims to have orchestrated it. Its student wing swept university elections. Its leaders gained television space. Its narratives became mainstream. Other July protest outfits, including the National Citizens Party backed by Yunus, were reduced to junior partners, visible on screens, irrelevant in the streets. This is where Muhammad Yunus enters the frame. Installed as interim chief with global goodwill and Western applause, Yunus was expected to guide Bangladesh towards stability and elections. Instead, under his watch, Islamist ambition has been uncapped, not contained. The signs are unmistakable. Islamist mobs roaming the streets, ISIS and Al-Qaeda flags surfacing again, mass release of extremists from jails, attacks on secular cultural institutions like Chayanot and Udichi, the vandalization of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's residence, again with unmistakable ideological intent. And then came the moment that exposed the depth of Bangladesh's dissent. The lynching of Dipu Chandra, a 27-year-old Hindu garment worker, accused on rumor alone of insulting Islam. What followed was medieval. Dipu was beaten to death by a mob, his body stripped, tied to a tree, flogged after death, set on fire, burnt again on a highway as crowds chanted religious slogans and blocked traffic. This was not spontaneous rage. It was performative violence, a message to minorities, a message to dissenters, and a message to the state itself, that the monopoly of violence no longer belongs to the government.
What happened a few days ago to Dipu Chandra in Mymensingh near Dhaka was absolutely barbaric, a medieval scene, that you take an innocent factory worker out of his factory. He's handed over to the mobs on the grounds that he has committed some blasphemy, and the mobs beat him to death and then put him on a mast, and his dead body is burnt and thrown on the highway and things like that. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the point is that all of this while, these attacks have been happening, and Muhammad Yunus has dismissed them, saying this is fake news from India. Even in New York when he was questioned, even in his foreign travels, wherever he's questioned, he's always dismissed it as fake news from India. But this time, because there's been such a furor about this attack, he's been forced to take cognizance. He says 7 people have been arrested. It's a sham. These 7 people will be released on bail and nothing will happen to them. This has happened many times before in the last 18 months, and we know the same thing is going to happen again.
Yunus responded the only way his administration seems capable of responding, with post-facto arrests and social media statements. 7 people were detained, condemnations were issued, but deterrence was absent, authority was missing, fear remained. This lynching did not happen in isolation. It happened amid nationwide turmoil following Hadi's assassination. Protests spiraled into riots, government buildings were vandalized, newspaper offices were attacked, streets burned, and once again, India was dragged into the narrative. Within hours of Hadi's shooting, claims surfaced on social media that India had sent in sharpshooters, that the killer had fled across the border. None of it substantiated, all of it amplified. India became the convenient scapegoat, useful for masking internal power struggles and consolidating Islamist support. Scratch beneath the surface and the picture becomes clearer. Hadi himself was deeply embedded in the new Islamist ecosystem, a familiar face on television, delivering fiery speeches against India, against the Awami League, against Mujibur Rahman. He was close to Mahmudur Rahman, a key Islamist mobilizer with long years in Turkish exile. The circumstances of Hadi's killing remain murky. The accused shooter had links cutting across factions, released easily despite serious charges, protected by a system where political favorites walk free and adversaries rot in jail. What this points to is not an India-Pakistan conspiracy, it points to regime infighting. And yet, rather than confront these fractures, the Yunus administration has chosen denial. Denial of rising extremism, denial of Islamist capture, denial even as journalists are harassed, arrested, or hounded by mobs encouraged by regime-aligned voices. Editors who once faced intelligence calls under Hasina now face something worse: public trials, online witch hunts, and physical attacks. Media houses that supported Yunus found their offices vandalized while police stood aside. As one senior editor put it, Either part of the government allowed it or the government as a whole did it. This is not democracy being reborn. This is the state losing control. Internationally, the stakes are higher than ever. Bangladesh today is not just Dhaka's problem. The United States is an active stakeholder. China and Russia are watching closely. Turkey and Pakistan are exerting ideological and strategic influence. This is a crowded chessboard. There is also an uncomfortable truth that cannot be ignored. Sheikh Hasina made mistakes. She believed Islamism could be managed, accommodated, co-opted. Jamaat was never dismantled, only driven underground. Hifazat was indulged. Madrasas multiplied. And when the system cracked, those forces surged back stronger. But Yunus's failure is different. Hasina ruled with an iron fist. Yunus rules with hesitation. Where Hasina suppressed, Yunus appeases. Where Hasina controlled, Yunus denies. And denial in today's Bangladesh is fatal. So where does this leave India? For decades, New Delhi approached Bangladesh with romantic idealism, goodwill, economic concessions, border restraint, the belief that cooperation would produce stability and minority protection. That belief has collapsed. Bangladesh today shares uncomfortable ideological continuities with Pakistan. Political Islam runs deep. It always has. Dhaka was where the Muslim League was born. Bengal witnessed some of the bloodiest communal violence before partition. These undercurrents never disappeared after 1971.
Pakistan is definitely wanting to establish a pre-1971 regime in Bangladesh. You have to notice that all the people who took part in the regime change operation, whether it's Pakistan, Jamaat-e-Islami, America, Razakar, they were all the losers in 1971. And now they think that they have won the scene and they want to bring back what they had in 1971. And that was, using Bangladesh for launching attacks against India, using Bangladesh for establishing, like in Pakistan, a highly Islamist regime. Even the non-state actors supported by the Pakistan military, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, they already declared their presence in Bangladesh. And they've already declared themselves as fighters, on the side of the Islamists. So I think that certainly Pakistan is all out to do that, and they have embedded themselves fully with the Bangladesh army.
And the biggest victims of this trajectory have been Hindus, systematically dispossessed, demographically eroded, persecuted under Islamist regimes and ignored under so-called liberal ones. For them, there's only one refuge: India. And India has largely looked away. So what should India do now? First, abandon illusions. Bangladesh's contradictions cannot be resolved by diplomacy alone. Yunus's government is not a stabilizing force. It is presiding over fragmentation. Second, harden borders. Instability in Bangladesh directly impacts India's northeast. Infiltration, radicalisation, smuggling. These are not theoretical threats. They're operational realities. Third, apply calibrated pressure, not reckless intervention, not public grandstanding, but firm messaging, reduced indulgence, and a clear red line on minority safety. Fourth, prepare for prolonged instability. Elections alone will not fix Bangladesh, especially when major parties are excluded, mandates are manufactured, and Islamist forces are positioned to emerge stronger.
That everything that they're blaming India for is not correct. So India has, of course, responded very sharply, but India has also shown strategic restraint in continuing to send all the trade, the rice, etc. that is there. We have shown our willingness to continue the economic cooperation. But I can tell you that government of India is very seriously looking at what is happening, at the deteriorating situation, because at the moment the elections have been declared and the campaigning has started, you've seen complete instability. The police, the government, nobody is willing or able to control, and it is a complete anarchy. It's been so for the last 18 months, but now, the anarchy has come out in such great strength that, one really has to wonder for India whether our border security and the stability of the regime in Bangladesh, how adversely it's going to affect India. So I'm sure that the government of India is going to be very strong on its insistence on free, fair, and inclusive elections in Bangladesh, that without the inclusivity and participatory elections, they will not be credible.
India must also think beyond short-term crisis management. Expanded humanitarian and legal frameworks for persecuted minorities are no longer optional debates. They are strategic necessities. Above all, India must recognize this moment for what it is, a wake-up call. Yunus's Bangladesh is not drifting, it is unraveling. And history tells us that when states unravel on India's borders, the costs are never contained. Ignoring these warnings would be catastrophic. India already faces a 2.5-front challenge. Allowing Bangladesh to slide further into chaos risks turning that into something far worse. Bangladesh is burning. The question is whether India will continue to watch from the sidelines or finally act with clarity, realism, and resolve. Thank you for watching Statecraft.